Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a reading stack that looks, on the surface, like a familiar fairy tale, and, well, we're tearing it right open. We're going to expose the intricate, bloody, and politically charged reality that's just simmering beneath.
We really are. We're plunging headfirst into Deborah M. Brown's narrative, Snow.
And Snow is our core text for this. It's this incredibly detailed look at a royal court that's just drowning in desire, conspiracy, and ruthless maneuvering.
It is. And to really get the full picture, we're also supplementing it with two companion pieces, Awaken and Slayer. They help us capture the themes of, innocence, power, and desire in this really dark fantasy world.
And I think what's so fascinating is how the primary source completely twists the Snow White myth we all think we know. I mean, this is not about poisoned apples and glass coffins in the way you remember.
Not at all. This is a complex, high-stakes game. It's all about betrayal, and the struggle for the throne is dictated entirely by who holds the emotional and the physical leverage over the most dangerous players.
Exactly. So our mission for you, the listener, is to untangle this incredibly complex web of betrayals and secret relationships. And we're talking both hetero and homosexual relationships here. And really identify the ultimate winner in this intricate, bloody game.
Mm-hmm. And maybe more importantly, we need to answer the question that really defines the whole story. Whether knowledge, however painful it is to get, or a kind of naive innocence proved to be the greater defense.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the reigning queen, Anais. She really, she sets the stage for the entire catastrophe.
She really does. The source material is, it's brutally honest about her life before the huntsman shows up. You understand immediately that her marriage to the aging king was purely a transaction.
Purely. She wasn't seeking love at all.
Not even a little. She married for, and the text says it plainly, riches and power. She saw the throne as this prize she had earned through just calculated endurance.
And the text doesn't just say it was a difficult marriage. It paints this picture of constant, agonizing endurance. We read about her hoping to bear a son and viewing the king's attempts to, quote, ram himself inside her like a weapon as something she just had to endure.
It's a chilling detail, isn't it? It completely defines her emotional landscape before Rui arrives. It creates this foundation of deep physical revulsion and resignation.
Absolutely.
The king's demands are described as desperate, painful, and often crude. There's a line about him just stabbing and stabbing against her dry flesh, and her internal monologue shows she endured it not out of any loyalty, but because a male heir was the only way she could secure her position.
The only mechanism she had.
The only one. She was willing to accept physical violation for political ascendancy.
And crucially, that mechanism was failing. The king was getting older, no heir was appearing, and his attention, and therefore the court's leverage, was starting to shift back to his legitimate daughter, Snow White.
Which means Anais' position was becoming tenuous. Her internal coldness towards the girl grew, as the text says, much sharper, because Snow White was a walking, talking symbol of her own political failure.
It's a critical point we should probably dwell on for a second.
Yeah.
Anais wasn't born evil, was she?
No, I don't think so. She was a woman whose ambition had driven her to accept this role defined by suffering. She was losing her leverage, and that loss meant she risked becoming redundant or worse, exiled once the king died. She was, in a word, desperate.
And it's right into this volatile, desperate environment that the catalyst arrives. The one who shatters her cold calculation and replaces it with something visceral and completely uncontrollable.
Rui Alvarez, the new huntsman.
Yes.
And the language used to describe him is so mythological, it immediately sets him up as this force of nature. He's described as dark like midnight, dark like death.
Anais first sees him from her window, right? He's wrestling a horse and a falcon, mastering both of these wild creatures.
And when he glances up at her, the connection is instantaneous, it's physical, it's completely overwhelming for her.
And it's the first time we see Anais experience genuine, primal physical hunger. The text describes a strange, dark fluttering low in her stomach and between her legs. She's exchanged that revulsion she felt for her husband for this instant, overpowering desire.
And what's fascinating is that this desire is immediately tied to dominance and power.
Right?
It is. Their intense affair starts almost immediately, but the relationship is never one of equals. Rui is characterized as venal and amoral. And while their coupling started fiercely, it devolved so quickly into a master-servant dynamic.
So Anais, who had spent all these years craving power for herself.
Now she's seeking validation not in her magic mirror, but in Rui's gaze. In his mirror eyes, as the text calls them. She needs him to tell her she was the fairest of them all.
But the only way to keep that reflection, to keep being the fairest, was to give up her dominance. It's almost as if her history of enduring pain to get political power convinced her that enduring pain was a requirement for passion.
And Rui understood that weakness perfectly, and he exploited it expertly. Rui's desire to inflict pain, it wasn't just for kicks, it was calculated leverage.
Yeah, the text says.
Not too much, just enough to let her know who was master, just enough to make her crave the fear as well as the pleasure. She was craving the fear because it was proof of his passion, and his passion was now the only source of her self-worth.
That's such a profound psychological trait. She went from physical servitude under the king for a political goal, the crown, to psychological servitude under Rui for an emotional one, validation, love.
In both cases, she accepts violation as the price of her ambition, and that's the difference between surviving a marriage and being completely destroyed by an affair.
Her vulnerability was tied entirely to her reflection in his eyes. As long as he confirmed her beauty, her desirability, she'd accept anything.
Anything, subservience, pain, you name it. And this desperation is the critical link that leads directly to the first major conspiracy. Rui saw her obsession and immediately weaponized it for political gain.
And the plan was simple. Rule through Anais. Rui's plot is to have Anais rule as regent for the young Snow White, who's still technically a minor.
The plan is breathtakingly ruthless and efficient. Step 1, kill the king. Step 2, secure Anais' seat as regent, giving them temporary, absolute power.
And the ultimate bribe for Anais.
Mm-hmm.
Rui promises her, I could have you in front of the whole court and no one could say a snake.
For her, that's the ultimate validation. It's the public affirmation of their forbidden, intense love and her political power all rolled into one.
And she asks him that classic question, the one every desperate lover asks, do you love me?
And Rui gives her the perfect, most devastatingly calculated answer based on her greatest insecurity. You are the fairest of them all. That's all it takes. That confirmation is enough to secure her loyalty, even if it means murder.
And the king dies that very same night, right after she agrees to this scheme. The official cause is apoplexy.
Very convenient. It covers Rui's swift action perfectly. And this is the moment Anais moves from being a victim of political necessity to an active, toxic conspirator driven by this blind obsession. And she does it all not for the crown itself, but for the man who promised her a certain reflection of herself.
She got the throne, but she completely forfeited her autonomy, her mind, in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And while she was busy destroying her own moral compass, the subject of their future regency, the princess, was quietly becoming the most prepared person in the entire kingdom.
Yes. When we shift to Snow White, we see the traditional archetypes immediately. Silver blonde, skin white as alabaster, but that physical description is the perfect camouflage for a completely different internal reality.
Her main defense mechanism against Anais's coldness and the court's scrutiny was what the text calls a glacial disinterest. She was silent, observant, and politically astute enough to realize that the less she revealed, the safer she was.
Absolutely. She knew she was a valuable piece on the chessboard, but she felt totally ignorant of the games that men and women played. She knew she lacked the practical knowledge to survive what was coming.
That ignorance was a huge liability. And before his death, the king must have recognized this because he gave her a very significant 16th birthday gift.
7 dwarves from the eastern mountains: Ander, Galt, Caphion, Maris, Shyla, Hiram, and Calico. And they're described as grim, golden men with eyes like black glass. Critically, they were bound to her by slave braids.
And this gift immediately presents the princess with her first major moral and political test. She can't stand the fact that they are her possessions.
It's an immediate act of moral conviction. It shows she is fundamentally different from the queen, who only sees people as tools to be used.
The dwarves felt that enslavement so keenly, too. Galt, the tallest and most resentful one, describes his slave braid as being marked by blood and pain.
Yeah, his hostility really highlighted the ethical cost of royalty and the injustice built into their gift. So Snow White's mission right from the start becomes one of liberation.
And she's very pragmatic about it. She seeks guidance from a letter from the Witches' Guild in Pompano, which shows she's willing to look for unconventional solutions. Her mission: break the spell.
The ritual itself is highly intimate and physically demanding. It transforms the dynamic between princess and captive instantly. To break the braid's magical binding, Snow White had to cut her own palm with a dagger and let a single drop of her own blood fall onto the braid.
It's an exchange of her life force for their freedom.
Exactly. And Calico was the first one to volunteer. The moment his braid broke, he gives her what the text calls their first sweet kiss and says the most important line, "I did that because I want to, not because I have to."
And that one act solidifies their whole relationship. It's founded on reciprocal freedom and respect.
Mm.
It's such a crucial contrast to Anais and Rui's relationship, which is all about calculated dependence.
The depth of the enslavement is most obvious in Galt. He was the last one to be freed, probably because of his initial hostility. And when his braid finally breaks, he doesn't celebrate. He just weeps. The text says he was cradling his arm against his chest, while sobs tore through his body.
It shows the profound internal psychological damage of being owned.
It does. It shows the emotional cost of their loyalty. And despite being instantly free, all 7 of them choose to stay. They transition seamlessly from being slaves to devoted companions, and most importantly, they become her expert teachers.
This educational phase is the key to her survival. They systematically fill every single gap in her knowledge. Kefian and Maris teach her scholarly things like language and geography.
Shyla focuses on culture, art and poetry. Hiram covers music. And Ander, who is the most politically savvy, he teaches her court intrigue, treachery, and how to spot a lie.
And then there's the lesson that maybe changes her fate the most. Galt teaches her how to kill a man.
This is not the curriculum of a sheltered princess.
Not at all. This is a queen in training, gathering every necessary tool for lethal self-defense and political survival. She's learning to be the sword, not just the shield.
But Snow White recognizes that her education is still incomplete without addressing the inevitable battle of marriage. She's seen the rough, transactional nature of power and sex through Anais, and she knows she's betrothed to some unknown prince.
So she makes this highly pragmatic, almost clinical decision to seek out sexual knowledge. She says, "Teach me how a woman pleasures a man."
She understands that ignorance leaves her weaponless into this battle. She's afraid of the filthy rutting tendencies of men, and she sees the marriage bed not as a place for affection, but as a place of potential control and exploitation. She wants knowledge to negotiate, not just endure.
And this is where Ander steps up, not just as a teacher, but as a protector of her soul.
He devises a lesson that is comprehensive, specific, but also emotionally safe for her. He gives her a silver-framed mirror and tells her to observe him and Galt making love, and he insists everything that is done with love. He frames the entire act as a lesson in intimacy and respect.
That framing is the whole point. It's the difference between learning a technique and learning a philosophy. She witnesses Ander and Galt, who've been loyal lovers since they were boys, in this achingly tender embrace.
They share slow, gentle kisses and profound affection. Galt is murmuring, "I love you." It's a powerful contrast. Snow White had only ever seen the rough hunger and cold dominance of Anais and Rui, or the desperate violation of the king.
Now she sees mutual respect. She sees love. She sees that physical intimacy doesn't have to be brutal or transactional.
And the lesson is highly specific, too. She learns the mechanics of pleasure, observing exactly where to touch, where to run the tip of her tongue, how small acts could make a man arch from the bed with a coarse cry. She learns not just how to pleasure a man, but how to control the interaction, how to command a powerful response through knowledge.
By gaining this knowledge of mutual pleasure and emotional connection, she inoculates herself against the fear of the marriage bed.
Exactly. She learns that sex is power, and that power is best wielded through shared desire, not through force. Her education, physical, political, and intimate, is now complete. She's ready for the games ahead.
And she needs to be, because the game that's coming is far dutier and more complex than anyone could have predicted.
Snow White had prepared herself for, a typical arrogant prince. But Prince Charming, her betrothed, is revealed immediately to be something far more dangerous. He's a sociopath with impeccable connections.
The arrogance is just astounding. His true intentions are laid bare instantly. He intends to, quote, ride both the mare and the filly, meaning he plans to sexually dominate both the current queen, Anais, and the future queen, Snow White.
And his view of women is purely utilitarian. It's cruel. He judges them like livestock, saying, "A well-broken mare is a much sweeter ride than an unbroken filly."
That analogy just perfectly illustrates his contempt. He sees Anais' experience as useful and Snow White's innocence as a temporary challenge, and he makes his disdain for the dwarves, her protectors, perfectly clear.
Oh yeah, he vows they would be amongst the first things to go once he and Snow White were wed. This shows he views her companions as an obstacle to his absolute control.
But the real revelation, the one that makes the whole conspiracy so terrifyingly effective, is the grand scheme built on the secret, ongoing sexual relationship between Prince Charming and Rui Alvarez.
This is the genius of the plot. It intertwines their genuine emotion, their long-standing love affair, with ruthless political calculation. And this wasn't a new relationship. Charming's father had caught them together 2 years earlier.
Right, and that's how Rui got that scar on his face.
Exactly. Rui was exiled, and Charming was instantly betrothed to Snow White as a sort of corrective measure.
So the marriage proposal that was meant to separate them actually brought the two most ruthless operators back into proximity and gave them the perfect cover to enact their shared conspiracy. We should probably slow down and explain the complexity of this northern plot because it is the definition of cynical arrogance.
It's a four-step masterpiece, designed to eliminate all rivals and secure total political leverage for Charming.
Okay, step one. Charming marries Snow White and get her with child as quickly as possible. He even brags about having bastards scattered elsewhere, so he's adept at producing heirs.
This secures the legitimate succession and makes the rest of the plan possible. So then, step two. Anais, still blinded by her obsession with Rui, is manipulated into murdering Snow White after the heir is born.
Which eliminates the legitimate queen.
Right. Then step three. Anais is swiftly executed for the regicide. This eliminates the regent, the queen, and Rui's desperate lover all in one go.
And step four. Charming rules as regent for the infant heir, securing control of the wealthy southern kingdom. Eventually, when his own father dies, Charming leaves the heir behind, claims his northern throne, and finally Rui joins him there. No more hiding.
Their shared goal was for Charming to have everything he desired, this man most of all.
The depth of that betrayal, especially of Anais, is just staggering. This whole plan relies entirely on her blind, desperate love for Rui, and Charming even asks Rui if he gets any pleasure from Anais.
And Rui doesn't hesitate. He dismisses his sexual involvement with Anais as merely work. He sees their shared time, her pain, her declarations of love as nothing more than a necessary political task. The depth of his contempt is right there in his view of the scheme. Nice work if you can get it.
Anais is just a temporary tool.
That's it. And the cruelty doesn't stop there. To build trust for the plot, Rui insists that Anais sleep with Charming. To encourage him, he says.
This sacrifice is necessary to make Charming believe Anais is truly on board. This is the ultimate violation. She's being told to commit adultery with a man she finds repulsive, on the advice of the man she idolizes, as a means to her own eventual execution.
And Anais, now completely broken psychologically, agrees. She feels ill at the thought of lying with another man, especially Charming, but her fear of losing Rui's love, the fear that he would stop seeing her as the fairest, it overrides everything. She clings to Rui's lie that it's necessary.
And this just highlights the central difference between the two women. Anais, the powerful queen, is utterly powerless because her love is blind and based on external validation.
Whereas Charming and Rui are bonded by genuine love and shared rational ambition. It makes their conspiracy seem unassailable. But, as we know, the best-laid plans often unravel because of the one factor they didn't account for.
Knowledge.
The conspiracy was brilliant in its cynicism, but it failed to account for the depth of Snow White's loyalty and, more importantly, the explicit knowledge she had acquired.
Exactly. The tipping point arrives when Kaliko, who's always watchful and protective, suspects something is wrong with Charming and Rui's overly intense private meetings. He leads Snow White to the ornamental wood to observe them.
And this is Snow White's moment of truth. They witness Rui perform a sexual act for Charming, followed by the men kissing. This confirms both their long-standing relationship and, given Rui's maneuvering, it implicitly confirms the plot her companions had suspected.
And Snow White's initial reaction is twofold. First, just profound disappointment. She feels like a fool for having entertained even a brief, naive hope that Charming's pretty words might have been sincere.
But the second reaction is far more powerful. The shock instantly clarifies her true affections. She realizes immediately how blind she was to the true selfless love that was right in front of her Kaliko.
This discovery acts as an emotional and physical turning point. She sheds the last bits of her innocence and embraces her destiny.
And they immediately consummate their love. The text contrasts this beautifully with the rough lust of Anais and Rui. Snow White and Kaliko's relationship is characterized by gentleness, mutual learning, and this profound sense of coming home.
This is her chosen future, secured by the fact that she chose a partner based on loyalty and love, not dynastic obligation.
But while Snow White finds peace, Galt is sinking into turmoil. He had discovered the true nature of Charming and Rui's relationship weeks earlier, but kept it secret, bottling his resentment. He finally decides he just can't let the conspiracy continue.
So he confronts them. He interrupts their tryst in this moment of emotional crisis. And this leads to a savage beating by Charming, who is enraged by the interruption and Galt's defiance.
And this is where we have to pause and address Galt's deep trauma. Charming's assault is purely physical and brutal. But the crucial detail is that Charming tries to assault Galt and fails to get any response. Then Rui steps in.
Right.
And Rui's touch, in contrast to Charming's violence, is described as gentle. And, horrifically, it causes Galt to feel pleasure.
That distinction is the true anatomy of betrayal in this story. Galt could handle the physical pain from an enemy like Charming. But the pleasure induced by Rui, a former fellow slave, and now the enemy, it shattered his sense of self.
He says it later that Rui made me want him, and I can never forgive him for that.
The violation isn't just physical, it's psychological. Galt's self-loathing comes from the feeling that his own body betrayed him, finding pleasure in the hands of the man who embodied deceit and cruelty.
It makes his trauma exponentially deeper than just a physical injury.
Snow White intervenes at this critical moment, arriving with her other protectors, and she asserts her power forcefully to protect Galt, saying, "Galt belongs to me." She's no longer the naive filly. She's the queen who claims her people.
But Galt is emotionally shattered. He refuses Anders' comfort. His mind is just fixed on retribution.
So he channels that fury and self-loathing into vengeance against Rui, the architect of his pain. He seeks out the queen, Anais, knowing she's also being used.
He leads her through a secret passageway accessed via a carved wooden rose to a peephole that overlooks Rui's room.
And this is Anais' final, devastating moment of clarity. She doesn't just see a betrayal. She hears Rui dismiss her love as whining and confirm the plot to murder her.
Her desperate dependence, that fragile illusion of being the fairest, it just shatters completely. She realizes she sacrificed everything, her morality, her title, her future, for a man who saw her as merely work.
And Anais, having lost her love, her power, her illusion of self-worth, she turns lethal. Galt, seeking his own catharsis, hands her the dagger and directs her hand precisely. He tells her to strike between these two ribs. It'll slide in like butter.
And Anais murders Rui instantly. Her dagger is driven by the accumulated rage of years of political and emotional abuse.
The dramatic irony is exquisite. Anais' revenge against her lover is guided by Galt, who sought revenge for the psychological violation inflicted by the same lover. Rui dies staring sightlessly at the ceiling, killed by the very dependency he engineered.
Anais' final act is one of profound self-destruction. She retrieves an iron-bound casket from under her bed that contains the perfect, glossy red apple. This was the apple she had poisoned over 3 full moons, a magical preparation originally meant for Snow White.
She looks one last time into Rui's dead, mirror eyes, trying to convince herself she was still the fairest of them all. But the reflection is gone. The illusion can't be sustained without his affirmation.
So, unable to live with the knowledge of her folly, she commits suicide by biting into the poisoned apple. The queen and her lover are dead, but the war is not over.
No. The final bloody culmination happens on the feast day of Dwalin Eve. Charming finds Rui's body and also finds a forged note from Galt Bessarion, claiming the murder and mocking him.
Charming just flies into a deranged rage. He storms Snow White's chambers, intent on murder.
Galt, having set this final climax in motion, finally finds a moment of peace. He kisses Ander goodbye, the man he loved, and resolves to face the consequences. When Charming bursts in, Galt stands, achieves this final, profound moment of acceptance, and spreads his arms wide against the mantelpiece.
He says, "I am now happy."
And Charming kills him instantly with his sword, driven by fury and his own profound loss. But that's Charming's last act. Maris, one of the remaining dwarf guards, instantly avenges Galt, burying an axe in Charming's back.
And just like that, the plot is neutralized. The 3 conspirators lie dead on the floor of the throne room.
The aftermath is devastating, especially for the dwarves. Ander, heartbroken, leaves the court. He takes a small silver casket containing Galt's heart to bury in his mountain homeland.
It's a moment of profound grief and devotion. It emphasizes that while the political battle is won, the emotional cost is immense.
But the threat is gone. Snow White and Calico, free from all the political maneuvering and the need to marry for power, they wed. Calico, the freedman, becomes her king.
She has secured a future that's founded on mutual respect, loyalty, and the shared promise of happy ever after. A promise earned not through magic, but through hard-won knowledge.
So if we look back at the entire arc, the distinction is so clear. Anais' downfall was based on blind, desperate love and this hunger for external validation. Snow White's survival was based on the measured, pragmatic acquisition of painful, essential knowledge.
Exactly. Her survival hinged entirely on Anders' mirror lesson. It taught her the emotional and physical reality of sex beyond the filthy rutting she was so afraid of. She learned that intimacy could be tender, communicative, and empowering.
A tool to choose, not an obligation to endure.
Precisely. And this isn't just about technique, it's about defining one's own terms for pleasure and intimacy. And that theme of necessary self-knowledge is so powerfully reinforced by the companion source, Awaken.
Right. In Awaken, Prince Rilio, even though he's encased in stone, teaches Marina that she has to learn her own body's desires before she seeks a partner.
He emphasizes the radical idea of self-pleasure as a path to knowledge. He states that the touch of your own hands is unlike the touch of another.
The idea is that you have to map your own desires first, so that when a partner arrives, you know exactly what genuine ecstasy feels like, and you can spot a counterfeit.
Yes. Rilio insists that true self-knowledge lets you distinguish between mere gratification and profound mutual connection. And he defines that true connection in explicit and expansive terms. He says a true lover seeks to make your desire burn so hot it incinerates us both with the ecstasy of our joining.
And he explicitly includes everything, mouth, hand, arse, bondage, etc., as long as it's rooted in mutual, overwhelming desire.
This mirrors the lesson Snow White received perfectly. Pleasure is diverse, powerful, and essential to master, not something to fear or endure passively. And that knowledge allowed her to recognize the genuine love offered by Kaliko and contrast it with the manipulative arrogance of Charming.
This capacity for self-determination and critical thinking allows Snow White to completely subvert the classic fairy tale ending. She rejects the established prince, Charming, the embodiment of patriarchal and political expectation, who only saw her as property.
Instead, she chooses Kaliko, a man who started as her attendant but earned his freedom and her devotion. She secures a king who loves her and is loyal, rather than one who seeks political power over her body and her kingdom.
A choice rooted in wisdom, not convenience.
And this preference for autonomy over obligation is also the core, fierce message of the second companion source, Slayer.
In Slayer, the heroine, Brianna the Dragon Slayer, is the literal embodiment of proactive power. She explicitly rejects Prince Cahill's marriage proposal, even though he is the traditional happy ending.
Her refusal is based on the fear of losing her hard-won autonomy. Brianna sees marriage as giving up everything, fearing she would belong to him, despite his reassurances. She sees it as a trap of subservience.
Her rejection is so sharp and absolute. I don't need a stinking husband to make demands of me once he thinks he owns me.
And that final line is so evocative. She says she would prefer to kiss a dragon than marry him. It's a vivid metaphor for maintaining her fierce, dangerous autonomy and rejecting the traditional role where her worth is defined by a powerful husband.
So when Charming tries to intimidate Snow White, he fails completely because she had already obtained the essential knowledge he thought she lacked, the knowledge of self-worth and genuine affection.
And that's the key. Anais was undone because she desperately wanted to be affirmed, even if it meant being owned. Snow White was saved by her refusal to be owned, choosing self-knowledge and mutual respect instead.
That distinction, the difference between being affirmed by a tyrant and affirming your own worth, is the central, powerful takeaway from this entire deep dive.
So if we summarize this complex narrative, the lesson is clear. Anais was undone by a blind, desperate, self-destructive love that led her to commit murder and suicide. Rui and Charming were undone by their cynical arrogance and their absolute certainty that their targets, two women, one young, one desperate, lacked the self-awareness to see through their games.
And Snow White prevailed not through the innocence of a fairy tale princess, but through critical thinking, fierce loyalty to her chosen companions, and the acquisition of painful, essential knowledge. Political, emotional, and physical knowledge that empowered her to choose her own path, rather than submit to one that was forced upon her.
The sources show us that Snow White's true defense wasn't the 7 dwarves protecting her physically. It was the explicit knowledge they gave her, culminating in that mirror lesson. So if knowledge is power, and fear is often a prerequisite for learning in these dark court dramas, what is the most dangerous lesson a naive ruler must acquire to truly survive?
It's the lesson Anais learned far too late, and one that Galt recognized in his final, tragic moment of acceptance. That betrayal often comes disguised as the deepest love, and the only true power lies in refusing to let anyone control your self-worth or your body. That awareness, as cold as Snow White's initial persona, is what ultimately saves the kingdom. It's a powerful thought for you to carry until our next deep dive.